Thanos is definitely one of the most requested heroes, or should I say villain in this case, in Marvel Rivals. But when it comes to adapting the power of all 6 Infinity Stones, there's simply so many possibilities that pretty much everyone has their own different ideas on how they would do it, including myself. When it comes to making this video, I spent quite a while thinking about it. But with the latest release of Deadpool, which I think was really cool, it gave me the perfect idea of how Thanos should work, and that is to make him just like Deadpool, a multi-role character that depending on which class you pick, he has different abilities. But before we get into the video, if you're new here, which you most likely are, I haven't posted in a while, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That would help me a lot to show some support. Drop that like button and activate the notifications. Now, without further ado, let's get into my big idea. Now, I'm just going to explain to you overall how he's going to work first, just so it is easier. My idea is to make it so, depending on what role you pick Thanos in, he activates 2 different Infinity Stones, because, you know, he has 6, 2 for each role. Just kind of sounded perfect to me. And so it was all about spreading each Infinity Stone in the right role. For the DPS role, for example, I picked the Reality Stone and the Power Stone. And then for the tank role, you would have Space and Time. And finally for support, you would have the Soul Stone and the Mind Stone. So for his primary attack, I decided to go for kind of like a laser beam. Imagine it similar to the Emma beam, for example, except it would come out of his gauntlet. He would point his gauntlet at people and it would shoot lasers on the Infinity Stones. And obviously, depending on which class you are, these beams will have a different amount of damage, and on support class they will actually have a different property as well. Now, talking about the passive, I call it Infinity Overcharge, and it is on the F key of your keyboard. Now, you would imagine that wielding the Infinity Stones is not easy. I mean, even Thanos, if you watched Endgame, it really does seem like, you know, controlling that power takes a toll on you. It's a struggle, and I really wanted to find a way to adapt that into the game. So the way this is going to work is you have infinite ammo on your laser, but using abilities and using your laser will feed into a Infinity Overcharge meter that's going to be on your screen, again similar to the Emma Frost one, except the upgrades that you get from charging this meter will not be simply just, you know, a stronger laser. Once the effects of overcharge are at maximum, Thanos will enter the overcharge state, and this basically gives him a total of 4 seconds to release that energy, expel it out of him. And this release, this explosion that happens, will have different effects depending on which class of Thanos you are playing. And if you happen to not release it within 4 seconds, it will release by itself. So it's not something that you can ignore. Eventually, it will happen whether you want it or not. So if you want to be calculated with it and release it on your time, you can kind of time the overcharge, press F at the right time and explode. I think there's a lot of possibilities that come with that, and I really liked how I managed to introduce this aspect of the character where the stones, you know, they're OP, they're strong, but they take a toll on you because they're really powerful, you know, artifacts that take a toll on the user. So now with the passive out of the way, we can finally deep dive into each class and therefore the Infinity Stones, and I think we will start with tank. So like I said, each class will have their different abilities and benefits, and for tank role, Thanos will have 650 HP as well as the control of the Time Stone and the Space Stone. Now, the way these stones work when it comes to, you know, the buttons that you have to press to activate them, I thought it would be pretty cool to first of all press E to enter the infinity stance. So when you press E, he will basically open his hand, and you have the choice between pressing left click and pressing right click to choose between the 2 infinity stones that you control, you know, depending on what role you are on. This is very similar to, for example, Daredevil. When he presses E, he chooses between 2 different abilities. So on tank, if you press E and you press your left click, you will activate the Space Stone. And what does the Space Stone do? So once you activate it by, you know, going E and then left click, you will enter the Space Stone stance. that basically lets Thanos empower his punches. So he's gonna be throwing a lot of punches for the next 7 seconds, and these punches basically do a lot of AoE damage to the enemy team, as well as some max HP damage for the primary target. So if you're punching a bunch of tanks in the front line, but you're primarily punching, let's say, Magneto, he's taking max HP, and then the group next to him takes a little bit, of that AoE. Just to make it a little bit balanced, I don't want everybody to taking, max HP damage. That would be a little bit too broken, I think. And as you would imagine, this kind of sets the tone for Tank Thanos being more of a brawler, which is really what I kind of imagine him to be, in the movie, right? He's brawling people, not only from far away with his powers, but also he's just punching people in the face and, choke holding them. I feel like that would be a pretty cool way to play Thanos himself. Now, into the Time Stone is actually a pretty unique mechanic that I don't think I've ever seen in any other game, not that I remember. So my visual representation here is going to be a little drawing that you'll see in a minute. But basically, what Thanos will do with the Time Stone is that he will activate a time wall in which players are slowed down in time. So imagine like a big rectangle that you put in like a choke or something, a corridor. And when somebody is inside that rectangle, they become extremely slow. And the same thing goes for casting time for their abilities. So if a character has to move to cast a certain ability, they will move super slow. And for projectiles as well, they will move slower through that barrier. And it won't be infinite because obviously that will be quite OP. So I will make it last 8 seconds. I think that's a pretty fair time, but again, it's very hard to find a visual representation of that. If you guys know any games that have a similar mechanic, please feel free to let me know. But you have to deal with this little drawing that I'm showing on the screen here. As I'm making this, I'm not sure exactly how it's gonna look, but it'll be not that great, but I hope you guys can understand it. I think it's super unique. I really wanted to find a way to actually mess with time in this game in a way that felt balanced and that fits the tank role. So I think I landed in a pretty sweet spot here. And lastly, for this tank kit, like I mentioned, the primary Infinity Overcharge will change depending on role. So for this one, the explosion will actually cause opponents to be slowed and allies to gain bonus HP. So that closes out Tank Thanos quite well. He's pretty much just a bruiser. He can slow the enemy team down. He can do lots of damage with his punches. I thought it ended up quite nice. But before we get into my favorite class of Thanos, which is a DPS, which I know I'm a DPS main, I like DPS the most. I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm making a comeback. It has been a while since I posted, so if you're new here, which you most likely are, I would really love if you guys would subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it yet. It helps me a ton. It shows that you guys enjoy this, that you want more. Any kind of support will be appreciated. Drop that like button, activate notifications, and thank you so much. Now let's get back to the video. Now diving into my favorite version of Thanos, DPS Row Thanos. This Thanos has control over the Power Stone and the Reality Stone, and he has 300 HP. Now to start with the Power Stone, clicking E and going right into your left click will give you your Power Stone. Now the way this works is at first it will work like a stance where Thanos will put his gauntlet in front of himself to block damage, similar to Blade, for example, when he puts up his sword. And by doing that, he will enter a damage reduction stance where he just takes less damage, but it lasts 5 seconds. And the twist of this is that during these 5 seconds, depending on how much damage you absorb, you'll be able to put out more damage. So you're going to absorb all that, and then you're going to shoot. Your gauntlet primary is going to change into a purple laser that is a lot more damage than your primary. Its base is more damage than the primary, and depending on how much you reduced, it is even more damage. So the thresholds would be 0 to 100 damage, and then 100 to 200 you will get even more damage, and then 300 and above will be the maximum cap. So he cannot be displaced also during this stance. I think this is important to mention. He can be CC'd out of it. It makes him immune. He absorbs the damage and puts out a bunch. That's basically how it works, and the cooldown will be 15 seconds. I think it should be quite high because this is a quite a powerful ability here that he's putting out. I don't want it to be too frequent. Now for the Reality Stone is also a very interesting ability that I like quite a lot. To start with, it has 2 charges, and what it does is that it allows Thanos to reshape reality by creating pillars on the map that basically shoot out of the ground and of walls, depending where, wherever you want to place it. And think of it kind of like a group wall, except it just shoots out of the ground, and any opponent that is hit by this pillar takes an impact towards the direction of the pillar. So if you're shooting it, from the ground upwards, and somebody is on top of that little area, they get shot up in the air, for example, right? And if they are pushed into another wall, so they kind of like an Emma kick, you can imagine, they also take damage from taking impact from somewhere. They take damage from being hit, and then take extra damage for the impact somewhere else. So you have 2 charges, and these pillars have 200 health, which is 50 below Groot. I think that's pretty fair. I did not want him to be as tanky as Groot, because this is a DPS at the end of the day. And then finally, for the primary, it works like normal. You have the Infinity Overcharge that builds up by using your primary attack. But the difference for the DPS is that the explosion around you when you overcharge does just damage. That's the only property that it has. If you hit enemies, it does damage. And the Power Stone, when you are in Power Stone mode, shooting the laser beam, that also charges your Infinity. So it will charge even faster. So I think that's pretty interesting to have something to worry about. If you're doing a lot of damage and you're planning on using your discharge, you need to keep in mind that the Power Stone will speed that up. I think that's a pretty good spot for this ability. And now, last but not least, we have the support role. Now, to remind you, we have control over the Mind Stone and Soul Stone here. Support Thanos will also have 275 HP. Now, starting with the Mind Stone, going into your E and pressing left click will give you the Mind Stone. The way this works is that once you activate the Mind Stone, you will tap into the enemy's team's mind, and by doing that, you reveal their location to both Thanos and his whole team for the next 8 seconds. So you press it, and then boom, everybody on your team can see the enemy, kind of like Daredevil's radar, for example, but he shares it with his team for a short amount of time. And additionally, once you cast this, it will give enemies a small slow and allies a small speed buff. So during those 8 seconds, they are slowed by a little bit, and your team is fast. So it's a good ability for entry. So if you're trying to enter point, force your way in, you can press it down, enemies can't move for a little while, your team is faster. I think it's a really good utility ability, and it's a Mind Stone. I wanted to find a way to tap into the enemy team's head, not necessarily mind control, because I think that'd be quite complicated to introduce, and Thanos already has enough going on. So I thought this is a pretty good middle ground here. Now for your E right click of the Soul Stone. So once you activate the Soul Stone, basically for the next 8 seconds, when you press your left click, you will shoot out these small areas on the ground that will cleanse ally souls. Now what do I mean by cleansing their souls? I don't mean an actual cleansing effect like Gambit. So if you shoot out a small area, soul area, and a ally walks upon that area, or they're already standing there, they will get healed and gain movement speed. Now you can shoot out these areas as long as those 8 seconds are up, so you can just keep shooting them, but you gotta keep in mind that you can also right click for your primary, right? So you gotta balance those things up, because on support role Thanos, your right click beam will heal. So I think this is a pretty good way to make you think before you use your abilities. So do you want to go for a more localized heal, of your allies in the enemy backlines? He needs a heal, you do your right click. Otherwise, for people that are close by mid range, you use your left click and you give them that little movement speed. So you gotta kind of pick and choose between what is best in the situation. So you gotta think really fast. I didn't want to make him just like a heal bot. I also thought about maybe just giving him like small charges of healing, but that would be too similar to Adam Warlock, for example. So I think this is a pretty decent middle ground. And him being 275 also gives him a little survivability, right? He has more HP, and if you ever want to escape something, you can just enter soul mode and maybe left click yourself, heal yourself, get out of the situation. So I think this is pretty cool. Now, to close off his kit before the big reveal of the ultimate, which, maybe you have some ideas on what it is, maybe you don't. Just a quick ability that will be universal to all Thanos's that I thought was needed is some movement. He doesn't have any movement. If you go too deep, you're kind of screwed. If you get dove, you're kind of screwed. So he needed some kind of movement to get out. And on his shift key, I'm just implementing a simple ability. Super simple. It's just a leap. He will leap in a medium distance in front of him, so it will be a slow leap. I don't think Thanos should move too fast. Kind of like almost like a Hulk leap, but less height. Okay. Now for the big reveal, the ultimate. I'm sure you guys are all excited. You probably know what it is, and it's the snap. Now, just to start, I know a lot of people probably wouldn't like it. The idea of a snap, but this is what it is. He's gonna snap his fingers, and half of all players in the game are gonna be just faded out of existence. But don't worry, I've done some implementations here to make it a little bit more balanced. So first of all, I'm making it so his ult is a lot harder to charge. He's gonna have, like, imagine triple the amount of ult charge of your average character. I don't know exactly what the number will be, but I would imagine it to be high enough to where he would ult only maybe 2 times on average, right? Every round on average, he's ulting 2 times. I think that would kind of balance it out. I don't want, people to just get snapped away every, 40 seconds. I think that's be kind of annoying. In addition to that, if you do die to the snap, your death cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds. So we won't get default, death time as well. So it's not that big of a punishment, but it's a punishment. So once you do cast that ultimate, which I call perfectly balanced, Thanos will start charging up his snap. So it won't be instant. He kind of just kneels down on the ground and starts charging up. Kind of like the movie where, like, he kind of struggles to snap slowly, but he, it just takes a while, and then you snap. And while he does that, he's CC immune. He's immune to damage. There is basically no way of stopping it. Thanos is the end. There's no way to avoid it. You will get snapped. But this timer takes 5 seconds for him to snap, so you do have some time to strategize and think of what you're gonna do once you do die, if you even die. And just imagine the amount of fun situations you will get. I know that would be frustrating, but I can't help but think it would be hilarious if somebody picks Thanos and accidentally wipes their own team. Like, they just kill everyone on their team by pure chance. Like, I get it, people would not like it, but the idea of it sounds so goofy and funny to me that I couldn't avoid it. Trust me, I tried multiple other ideas, and this is the only one that it wouldn't leave my head. I needed to make this happen. And with implementations that I introduce here, I hope you guys can kind of see it in the same way that I do, that it could be potentially really fun, risky pick to have. And to close out the video, just a couple of team ups that I had in mind to add to the game if Thanos was introduced. Adam Warlock would be cool, since he was, a very big enemy of Thanos in the comics, and he used to be the host of the Soul Stone. If you want to add Gamora to the game ever, I think that'd be interesting. Same thing for Nebula. If you want to be more MCU oriented, obviously you have the rivalry of Thanos and Iron Man. Any of those I think would be super cool. And for the skins, honestly, the top skins that come to in mind for me is either a comic classic, right, with the golden and blue suit. I think that looks really cool with the art style of the game. I think it would be awesome. Old King Thanos also, I think, is really cool. The one from the comics, I think, would be super cool. Or a Venomized Thanos, I think, would be cool. Even though that season is kind of over, the symbiote season, I think, would be super awesome. But those are all my skins that I can think of. If you have any ideas, obviously leave it down in the comments. I would love to talk to you guys about it. But you've reached the end of the video. It's been a while. I haven't posted. I'm planning to, go back into this channel and upload a lot more. So let me know any video ideas that you guys have, characters that you want introduced, or characters that you want changed for my rework series. I also love doing those. Or just give me your thoughts on this video down in the comments. I love discussing different ideas that you guys might have that I didn't think of. It's always nice seeing how much you guys enjoy these, and all your ideas is super nice. And as always, if you're not yet subscribed, by the end of the video, come on. Surely you enjoy this video. Come on, give me a little subscription. Drop that like button. Activate the notifications. It helps me out a lot. It means the world, okay? So, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.